Welcome to Esoteric Guardian. Today, we delve into a topic shrouded in mystery, symbolism, and fascination. The 33rd degree of Freemasonry, a level many consider the pinnacle of esoteric and spiritual knowledge. For some, this degree represents access to universal truths. For others, it is a closely guarded secret held by those with the power to shape the world. But what lies behind this mystique? Is the 33rd degree truly a symbol of enlightenment, or is it simply a misunderstood concept? In this video, we'll explore its meaning, origins, and the impact it has on those who reach this level within Freemasonry. This journey will take us through symbols, ideas, and concepts that have profoundly influenced esoteric traditions throughout history. Get ready, because today we'll unveil some of the deepest keys to this degree and analyze how this knowledge can transform our perception of reality.
Pizza Hut is about
Freemasonry is one of the oldest and most enigmatic societies in the world, with a history tracing back to the guilds of builders in medieval Europe. These guilds were associations of master stonemasons responsible for constructing cathedrals, castles, and other iconic structures. Their technical and artistic knowledge was considered sacred, safeguarded by rituals and oaths that ensured it was passed down only to initiated members. Over time, these builder guilds evolved into what we now know as speculative Freemasonry. This transformation occurred between the 16th and 17th centuries, when individuals outside the construction trade, intellectuals, philosophers, and leaders, began joining, drawn by the moral and spiritual teachings offered by Freemasonry. The tools of the stonemasons, such as the square and compass, became symbols representing universal principles like integrity and balance. June 24, 1717, marked a pivotal moment in Masonic history with the founding of the first Grand Lodge of England. This event not only unified the independent lodges in London, but also established a formalized system that standardized Masonic rituals, symbols, and degrees. The Grand Lodge transitioned Freemasonry from a craft guild into a philosophical and spiritual fraternity with global influence. Following the establishment of the Grand Lodge, Freemasonry expanded rapidly across Europe, America, and beyond. This expansion was driven by the involvement of prominent figures of the time, such as Voltaire, Benjamin Franklin, and George Washington. These individuals not only enhanced the prestige of the order, but also helped promote Masonic ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity. The hierarchical structure of Freemasonry is based on degrees that symbolize personal progress and symbolic learning. The three foundational degrees, Entered Apprentice, Fellowcraft, and Master Mason, form the core of symbolic Freemasonry. Later, more complex systems, such as the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, introduced additional degrees with teachings on philosophy, symbolism, and morality. The Grand Lodge also played a crucial role in fostering values of tolerance and mutual understanding, especially during an era marked by deep religious and political divisions. Its influence extended beyond its members, leaving a cultural and philosophical impact that remains significant to this day. The 33rd degree of Freemasonry, within the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, symbolizes the pinnacle of the Masonic journey, representing perfection, spiritual knowledge, and the height of human evolution. This degree is not granted automatically, but is bestowed only upon those who have demonstrated an extraordinary commitment to Masonic values and a profound understanding of its philosophy. The number 33 holds powerful and universal symbolism. It is associated with perfection and spiritual transcendence. In Christianity, the 33 years of Christ's life represent a complete cycle of redemption and sacrifice. In the human body, the 33 vertebrae of the spine symbolize the spiritual ladder to enlightenment, a channel through which energy flows, connecting the earthly to the divine. These associations reinforce the idea that achieving the 33rd degree is not merely an acknowledgement, but a transformation in itself. The purpose of the 33rd degree is not tied to material power or worldly influence, as many believe. Its true meaning lies in a higher level of spiritual understanding and a deep commitment to serving humanity. Freemasons at this level are called to be guides, mentors, and living examples of the Masonic principles of truth, justice, and brotherhood. The rituals associated with the 33rd degree are designed to deepen the initiate's spiritual connection and reinforce their ethical commitment. While specific details vary depending on the Masonic jurisdiction, these ceremonies are known to include highly symbolic elements that emphasize the initiate's responsibility toward humanity. A central theme of these rituals is the balance between knowledge and service. The initiate is guided through a series of symbolic trials and reflections that lead to a deeper understanding of the dual nature of existence.
It's the time of the season when love runs high. In this time, give it to me easy, and let me try with pleasured hands to take you in the sun to promised lands, to show you everyone. It's the time of the season for loving. What's your name? Who's your daddy? He rich. Is he rich like me? Has he take us anytime to show you what you need to live? Tell it to me slowly. Tell you why I really want to know. It's the time of the season for loving.
Inaccessible to ordinary people. The ritual in the mansion is a metaphor for how these ruling classes use their esoteric knowledge to maintain their position of power. Kubrick shows us that these elites are not simply rich or powerful, but guardians of hidden secrets, secrets that cement their control over the world. Bill Harford's journey in Eyes Wide Shut can be interpreted as a descent into hell, where he confronts not only the external shadows represented by the elites and their rituals, but also the internal shadows of his own psyche. From the outset, Bill is portrayed as a successful doctor with a seemingly perfect life. But as the film progresses, it becomes clear that he is deeply disconnected from his true nature. Bill's real enemy is not the hidden elite, but his repressed desires, insecurities, and materialism. He is drawn into a cycle of lust and jealousy, and his failure to acknowledge these impulses leads him into increasingly dangerous situations. Kubrick shows us that the forces truly controlling Bill are not external, but lie within his own psyche. Throughout his odyssey, Bill confronts his own dark desires, but never reaches a true understanding of his situation. While he appears to be making choices, in reality, He is being guided along a predetermined path by his own unchecked impulses and desires, which he fails to fully comprehend. Ultimately, Eyes Wide Shut is a film about the power of desire and how it can be used to manipulate people. Kubrick reveals that those unaware of the esoteric forces governing their lives are doomed to be controlled by them, both by external elites and by the internal forces they fail to understand. Since its release, Eyes Wide Shut has sparked countless alternative theories regarding its meaning and symbolism, many of which focus on the hidden power and elites that Kubrick portrays in the film. The enigmatic nature of the plot, esoteric symbols, and character ambiguity allow for multiple interpretations that go beyond the surface narrative. One of the most popular theories suggests that Eyes Wide Shut is a veiled critique of the rituals and practices of global elites, particularly in relation to secret societies. The film shows Bill Harford, a high middle-class doctor, witnessing a ritual ceremony organized by an untouchable elite who use sex, power, and secrecy as mechanisms of control. The inclusion of esoteric elements like Venetian masks, ritualistic gatherings, and the sect's mansion, linked to the Rothschild family, has led many to believe that Kubrick was exposing the dark, hidden aspects of these elites. This theory is reinforced by the real-world context of the film, with the mansion's location connected to powerful historical figures. The connections to the extravagant masquerades organized by the Rothschilds in the 1970s, and the subtle references to the secretive practices of Scientology, of which Tom Cruise was a member, fuel speculation that Kubrick was revealing and influential organizations. Another interpretation delves into the theme of mind control, particularly in relation to large-scale manipulation projects like MK Ultra. This theory gains traction because of Nicole Kidman's father's involvement in studies related to this project in Australia. According to this perspective, Eyes Wide Shut portrays how elites not only control political and economic power, but also dominate the mental and spiritual realms of society. By entering this dark world, Bill becomes a pawn manipulated by higher forces. The use of masks and the ritualistic environment is also interpreted as symbols of mind control and dissociation from reality. The characters, while participating in sexual acts and rituals, seem to be in a trance, suggesting they are being controlled or manipulated by superior forces. This interpretation points to the idea that elites not only control what is visible, but also exert their power over the subconscious mind of the masses. One of the most intriguing theories posits that Stanley Kubrick used the film as a warning or revelation of hidden truths about the elites, which may have contributed to his death. Kubrick died just days after delivering the final cut of the film, which has fueled theories that his death was no accident. Some believe that Eyes Wide Shut exposes secrets that certain powerful organizations did not want to be made public. This theory is supported by the belief that Kubrick, being a perfectionist with access to insider knowledge through his connections in Hollywood, was trying to reveal something deeper about how the world works. The film's heavy use of symbols and references to elite power, hidden societies, and secret rituals suggest that he was attempting to unveil a reality beyond the surface. Another esoteric interpretation of the film focuses on the use of sex as a tool of manipulation by the elites. Throughout the film, sex is portrayed not just as a physical act, but as a means of power and control over the characters. This manipulation extends beyond the elites and touches characters like Bill, who is constantly tempted and forced to question his life and choices due to the sexual temptations he encounters. Ritualized sex, much like in the ancient cults of Inanna and Astarte, is presented as an esoteric force capable of both destruction and transformation. In this sense, the control over sexual desire is used to manipulate the characters, leading them into a spiral of confusion and loss of identity. For Kubrick, this force seems to reflect how elites control the basic instincts of people to maintain their grip on society. Some critics and esotericists interpret Eyes Wide Shut as a type of initiatory journey for Bill Harford. Throughout the film, Bill undergoes a series of trials and challenges that expose him to the darker sides of humanity and himself. These trials lead him on a descent into the hell of his own psyche, where he confronts his repressed desires, ambiguous morality, and emotional disconnection. Bill's journey parallels ancient rites of initiation, where the initiate must face their own darkness before reaching greater understanding. However, unlike traditional initiation journeys in Eyes Wide Shut, Bill does not seem to reach final enlightenment, but instead returns to the starting point, still trapped in a cycle of superficiality and materialism. This reinforces the idea that the film comments on the inescapable power structures that govern our lives. Finally, an alternative theory explores the use of mirrors and masks as symbols of duality and deception. The characters in the film, particularly Bill and Alice, present a facade to the world that hides their true nature. Mirrors reflect an internal identity that differs from what the characters project outward. In this sense, the film critiques contemporary society, where everyone wears a mask to hide their true desires and motivations. The use of masks in the secret ritual is also interpreted as a metaphor for how elites hide their true faces while manipulating the fate of others. The masks allow the participants to perform unspeakable acts without the moral constraints of society. Thus, Kubrick seems to suggest that we are all, to some extent, trapped in a world where masks and mirrors define our reality. In conclusion, Eyes Wide Shut is far more than a simple film. It is a deep dive into the hidden mysteries of the human psyche, power, and the elites, where sex, rituals, and duality play a fundamental role. Kubrick invites us to look beyond the surface and open our eyes to the uncomfortable truths that lie in the shadows of our society. The symbolic and esoteric richness of the film continues to generate theories and debates, making it a masterpiece that still resonates in the collective unconscious.
The function of a Zen teacher is to put his students in all kinds of situations where in the normal course of social relations they would get stuck. by asking nonsensical questions, by making absurd remarks, by all ways of unhinging things, and above all, keeping them stirred up with impossible demands. To hear the sound of one hand, to, without moving, stop a ship sailing out on the water, or to stop the sound of a train whistle in the distance. Magic. To touch the ceiling without getting up from one's chair. To take the 4 divisions of Tokyo out of your sleeve. To take Mount Fuji out of a pillbox. All these impossible questions are asked. And in the ordinary way of interpreting these questions, we think, well, now, gee, how could we do that? See, that's a very difficult question that's been asked. And you have to think, what would I do to do that? Because we are caught up in a certain way of discourse, which the language game that we play, and the social games, the production games, and the survival games that we play are good games. But we take them so seriously that we think that that is the only important thing. And this is to unstick us from that notion and realize that it would be just as good a game to drop dead now as to go on living. Is a lightning flash bad because it lives for a second as compared with the sun that goes on for billions of years? You can't make that sort of comparison, because a world of lightning goes also with a world where there's a sun, and vice versa. So long-lived creatures and short-lived creatures go together. That's the meaning of that saying. Flowering branches grow naturally, some short, some long. So this then is a scene in a Zen community where spontaneous behavior is encouraged within certain limits. And as the student becomes more and more used to it, those limits are expanded until eventually he can be trusted to go out on the street and behave like a true Zen character and get by perfectly well. You know what occasionally happens on the street when 2 people are walking down the sidewalk straight at each other, and they both decide to move to the right together, and then to the left together, and they somehow get stuck, and they can't pass each other. Zen teachers will pull just exactly that sort of stunt when going down a path and meet one of their students, to see if they can get him in a tangle, and can he escape from it. And you will find in everyday life that there is a very clear distinction between people who always seem to be self-possessed and people who are dithering and nervous and don't quite know how to react in any given situation, always getting embarrassed because they have their life too strongly programmed. You said, I mean, this is a common marriage argument. You said you would do such and such a thing at such and such a time, and now you've changed your plans. Not that the change of plans really caused any inconvenience, but just the feeling that when you say you will do something at a certain time, you ought to do it at that time, come hell or high water. Well, that's being very unadaptable. That's being a stone kind of sticky thing. If it, after all, doesn't matter when we do it, and somebody is offended because the time has been changed, that's simply because they are attached to punctuality as a fetish. And this is one of the great problems. This causes many automobile accidents. Men rushing home to be on time for dinner when they stayed late either working or they had to stop for a drink at some bar, or when the girl feels that she has to, if she has a fussy husband and she feels she has to have the dinner ready at exactly a certain moment, she ruins the cooking. You'd rather have a faithful wife and a bad cook. I hope I'm not treading on any toes. So, you see, we spend an awful lot of energy trying to make our lives fit images of what life is or should be, which they could never possibly fit. So, Zen practice is in getting rid of these images. But it's so explosive socially to do that. And it so worries people. They get vertigo, they get dizzy, they don't know which end is up. And this happens, you know, if you've ever been in one of those blab sessions, where they call them tea groups, I think, or something like that, where the people gather together without any clear idea of what this gathering's about. They know it's somehow self-exploration, but just how do you begin on that? And so somebody starts to push his idea, and then somebody else says, well, why are you trying to push your idea on us? And then they all get into an argument about the argument. And the most amazing confusions come about, but sometimes they all see what idiots they're being, and then they learn to live together in a really open and spontaneous way. Where a Zen master was present, and there was a geisha girl who served so beautifully and had such style that he suspected she must have some Zen training. And after a while, when she paused to fill his sake cup, he bowed to her and said, I'd like to give you a present. And she said, I would be most honored. And he took the iron chopsticks that are used for the hibachi, the charcoal brazier, moving the charcoal around. He picked up a piece of red-hot charcoal and gave it to her. Well, she had very long sleeves on her kimono. She whirled the sleeves around her hands and took the hot charcoal, withdrew to the kitchen, dumped it, and changed her kimono because it was burnt through. Then she came back into the room, and after a suitable interval, she stopped before the Zen master and bowed to him and said, I would like to give you, sir, a present. And he said, I would be very much honored. Of course, he was wearing a kimono, something like this. And so she picked up a piece of coal and offered it to him. He immediately produced a cigarette and said, thank you, that's just what I needed. Now, you know, in the same way that we have this in our culture, certain people who are comedians, who know how to make jokes and gags in a completely unprepared situation, face them with anything, and they somehow come through. So that is exactly the same thing in a special domain as Zen. Only a master of Zen does this in every life situation. But the important thing is to be able to do this This is the secret. You must remember, you can't make a mistake. Now, that's a very difficult thing to do, because from childhood up, we have had to conform to a certain social game. And if you're going to conform to this game, you can make mistakes or not make mistakes. And so this thing has gone into us all the time. You must do the right thing. There's certain conduct appropriate here, there's certain conduct appropriate there. And that sticks in us and gives us a double self all our lives long, because we never grow up. Do you realize that the whole of life plays a game, which is a childhood game? There are three kinds of people: top people, middle people, and bottom people. And there can't be any middle people unless there are bottom people and top people. There can't be any top people unless there are middle and bottom people. And so it goes. And everybody's trying to be in a top set. Well, if they're going to be there, there's got to be someone in a bottom set. And the people who do the right thing and the people who do the wrong thing. Here in Sausalito, we have this very, very plainly. There are the right people, the nice people who live up on the hill. Then there are the nasty people who live down here on the waterfront, and they grow beards, and they wear blue jeans, and they smoke marijuana, and whereas the other people on the top of the hill drive Cadillacs and have wall-to-wall carpeting and nicely mowed lawns, and their particular kind of poison is alcohol. Now,
God have mercy upon us.
the people who live on the top of the hill know that they're nice people. But they wouldn't know they were nice people unless they had some nasty people to compare themselves with. Every in-group requires an out-group, whereas the nasty people think they are the real far-out people, whereas those people, those hillbillies, are squares. And they wouldn't be able to feel far out unless there were squares. See? These things simply go together. But when that is not seen, we play the games of getting on top of things all the time. And so we're in a constant state of competition as to, if it's not I'm stronger than you, it's I'm wiser than you, I'm more loving than you, I'm more tolerant than you, I'm more sophisticated than you. It doesn't matter what it is, but this constant competition is going on. In terms of that competition, we can, of course, lose place and in that sense make mistakes. But what a Zen student is a person who is not involved in the status game.
We reviewed several testimonies.
That's the real meaning of a monk. He is not keeping up with the Joneses, and to be a master, he must get to the point where he's not trying to be a master. The whole idea of your being better than anybody else simply doesn't make any sense at all. It is totally meaningless. Because you see everybody manifesting the marvel of the universe in the same way as the stars do, and the water and the winds and the animals. And you see them all as being in their right places and not being able really to make mistakes, although they may think they're making mistakes or not making mistakes and playing all these competitive games, but that's their game. Now, I only say, if that game begins to bore you, and it begins to trouble you and give you ulcers and all kinds of things, then you raise the problem of getting out of it. And therefore, you start to become interested in things like Zen. That is simply a symptom of your growing in a certain direction, where you are tired of playing a certain kind of game. You are as naturally flowing in another direction as if a tree were putting out a new branch. So because you say, oh, well, we people are interested in higher things, you see, that depends still on the differentiation of rank between the superior and the inferior people. But when you begin to see through that and grow out of that, you don't think anymore of this superior and inferior classification. You don't think We are spiritual people who attend to higher things as distinct from these morons who are only interested in beer and television. The trouble with the human being is, like the trouble with certain animals, like the dinosaur, who evolved to the point where he was so big that he had to have two brains, a higher self in the head and a lower self in the rump. And the difficulty was to get these two brains coordinated. But we have exactly the same trouble. And we are suffering from a kind of jitters that comes from being two-brained. Now, you see, I'm not saying that that jitters is bad. It's a potential step in evolution and an opportunity of growth. But remember, in the process of growth, the oak is not better than the acorn. Acorns. Or you could say, just like I sometimes love to say, that a chicken is one egg's way of becoming others. So an oak is an acorn's way of becoming other acorns. Where is the point of superiority? The first verse of that poem I just quoted, the flowering branches grow naturally, some short, some long. The first verse is, in the landscape of spring, there is nothing superior and nothing inferior. The flowering branches are naturally some short, some long. So that's the point of view of being an outcast, in the sense of being outside the taking seriously of being involved in the social game, and therefore being threatened by making mistakes, of doing the wrong thing. That is to say, of carrying into adult life one's childhood conditioning, where somebody is constantly yammering at you to play the game. So therefore, the preachers and the teachers take the same attitude towards their adult congregations that parents take to children, and lecture them and tell them what they should do. And judges in courts feel also entitled to give people lectures because they say those criminal types haven't grown up, but neither have the judges. It takes two to make a quarrel. So one can begin to think in a new way, in the polarity thinking, instead of being stuck with the competitive thinking of the good guys and the bad guys, the cops and the robbers, the capitalists and the communists, all these things which are simply childishness. Now, of course, you recognize that if the moment I say that, it's like talking in English in order to show that the English language has limitations. And I am talking in a language that seems competitive to show that the competitive game has limitations. As if I were saying to all you cats here, look, I have something to tell you that is, and if you get this, you'll be in a better position than you were before you heard it.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
My father once told me, "Son, you see silence? Silence is power. Never explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Never waste time proving your worth to those who can't see it. Stay silent, stay focused, and let your success be the loudest response." He taught me that not everyone deserves an explanation, and not every battle is worth fighting. Some people will twist your words, no matter how carefully you speak. Some will doubt you, no matter how hard you prove yourself. That's why silence is a weapon, because when you stop talking and start doing, the results speak for themselves. So let them doubt you. Let them question you. Let them misunderstand you. It's not your job to convince them. Your only job is to keep moving forward, to keep building, to keep proving them wrong without ever saying a word. Because in the end, words fade, but success, that's undeniable.
I'd like to tell you about the strangest secret in the world. Not long ago, Albert Schweitzer, the great doctor and Nobel Prize winner, was being interviewed in London, and a reporter asked him, "Doctor, what's wrong with men today?" The great doctor was silent a moment, and then he said, "Men simply don't think." And it's about this that I want to talk with you. We live today in a golden age. This is an era that man has looked forward, dreamed of, and worked toward for thousands of years. But since it's here, we pretty well take it for granted. We in America are particularly fortunate to live in the richest land that ever existed on the face of the earth, a land of abundant opportunity for everyone. But do you know what happens? Let's take 100 men who start even at the age of 25. Do you have any idea what will happen to those men by the time they're 65? These 100 men who all start even at the age of 25 believe they're going to be successful. If you asked any one of these men if he wanted to be a success, he'd tell you that he did. And you'd notice that he was eager toward life, that there was a certain sparkle to his eye, an erectness to his carriage, and life seemed like a pretty interesting adventure to him. But by the time they're 65, 1 will be rich, 4 will be financially independent, 5 will still be working, 54 will be broke. Now think a moment. Out of the 100, only 5 make the grade. Why do so many fail? What has happened to the sparkle that was there when they were 25? What's become of the dreams, the hopes, the plans? And why is there such a large disparity between what these men intended to do and what they actually accomplished? When we say about 5% achieve success, we have to define success. And here's the definition. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. If a man is working toward a predetermined goal and knows where he's going, that man is a success. If he's not doing that, he's a failure. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Rollo May, the distinguished psychiatrist, wrote a wonderful book called Man's Search for Himself. And in this book he says, the opposite of courage in our society is not cowardice, it is conformity. And there you have the trouble today. It's conformity. People acting like everyone else, without knowing why, without knowing where they're going. Now think of it. In America right now, there are over 14 million people 65 years of age and over, and about 13 million of these 14 million are broke. They're dependent on someone else for life's necessities. Now, we learn to read by the time we're 7. We learn to make a living by the time we're 25. Usually, by that time, we're not only making a living, we're supporting a family. And yet, by the time we're 65, we haven't learned how to become financially independent in the richest land that has ever been known. Why? We conform. And the trouble is that we're acting like the wrong percentage group, the 95% who don't succeed. Now, why do these people conform? Well, they don't know, really. These people believe that their lives are shaped by circumstances, by things that happen to them, by exterior forces. They're outer-directed people. A survey was made one time that covered a lot of men, working men, and these men were asked this question. Why do you work? Why do you get up in the morning? 19 out of 20 had no idea. If you ask them, they'll say, everyone goes to work in the morning. And that's the reason they do it, because everyone else is doing it. Now let's get back to our definition of success. Who succeeds? The only man who succeeds is the man who is progressively realizing a worthy ideal. He's the man who says, I'm going to become this, and then begins to work toward that goal. I'll tell you who the successful people are. A success is the school teacher who's teaching school because that's what she wanted to do. The success is the woman who's a wife and mother because she wanted to become a wife and mother and is doing a good job of it. The success is the man who runs the corner gas station because that's what he wanted to do. The success is the successful salesman who wants to become a top-notch salesman and grow and build with his organization. A success is anyone who is doing deliberately a predetermined job because that's what he decided to do deliberately. But only 1 out of 20 does that. That's why today there isn't really any competition, unless we make it for ourselves. Instead of competing, all we have to do is create. Now, for 20 years, I looked for the key which would determine what would happen to a human being. Was there a key I wanted to know which would make the future a promise that we could foretell to a large extent? Was there a key that would guarantee a person's becoming successful if he only knew about it and knew how to use it? Well, there is such a key, and I've found it. Honestly, without ever achieving anything in particular, and others don't seem to work hard and yet seem to get everything. They have the magic touch. You've heard them say that about someone. Everything he touches turns to gold. And have you ever noticed that a man who becomes successful tends to continue to become successful? And on the other hand, have you noticed how a man who is a failure tends to continue to fail? It's because of goals. Some of us have them, some don't. People with goals succeed because they know where they're going. Now think of a ship leaving a harbor, and think of it with the complete voyage mapped out and planned. The captain and crew know exactly where it's going and how long it will take. It has a definite goal. 9,999 times out of 10,000, it will get to where it started out to get. Now let's take another ship, just like the first, only let's not put a crew on it, or a captain at the helm. Let's give it no aiming point, no goal, no destination. We just start the engines and let it go. I think you'll agree with me that if it gets out of the harbor at all, it will either sink or wind up on some deserted beach a derelict. It can't go any place because it has no destination and no guidance. It's the same with a human being. Take the salesman, for example. There is no other person in the world today with the future of a good salesman. Selling is the world's highest paid profession, if we're good at it and if we know where we're going. Every company needs top-notch salesmen, and they reward those men. The sky is the limit for them. But how many can you find? Someone once said, the human race is fixed, not to prevent the strong from winning, but to prevent the weak from losing. The American economy today can be likened to a convoy in time of war. The entire economy is slowed down to protect its weakest link, just as the convoy had to go at the speed that would permit its slowest vessel to remain in formation. That's why it's so easy to make a living today. It takes no particular brains or talent to make a living and support a family today. So we have a plateau of so-called security, if that's what a person's looking for. But we do have to decide how high above this plateau we want to aim for. Now let's get back to the strangest secret in the world, the story that I wanted to tell you today. Why do men with goals succeed in life, and men without them fail? Well, let me tell you something which, if you really understand it, will alter your life immediately. If you understand completely what I'm going to tell you from this moment on, your life will never be the same again. You'll suddenly find that good luck just seems to be attracted to you. The things you want just seem to fall in line. And from now on, you won't have the problems, the worries, the gnawing lump of anxiety that perhaps you've experienced before. Doubt, fear, well, they'll be things of the past. Here's the key to success, and the key to failure. We become what we think about. Now let me say that again. We become what we think about. Throughout all history, the great wise men and teachers, philosophers and prophets have disagreed with one another on many different things. It is only on this one point that they are in complete and unanimous agreement. Listen to what Marcus Aurelius, the great Roman emperor, said. He said, "A man's life is what his thoughts make of it." Disraeli said this, "Everything comes if a man will only wait. I have brought myself by long meditation to the conviction that a human being with a settled purpose must accomplish it, and that nothing can resist a will that will stake even existence for its fulfillment. Ralph Waldo Emerson said this, "A man is what he thinks about all day long." William James said, "The greatest discovery of my generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind." And he also said, "We need only in cold blood act as if the thing in question were real, and it will become infallibly real by growing into such a connection with our life that it will become real. It will become so knit with habit and emotion that our interest in it will be those which characterize belief." He also said this, "If you only care enough for a result, you will almost certainly attain it. If you wish to be rich, you will be rich. If you wish to be learned, you will be learned. If you wish to be good, you will be good. Only you must then really wish these things, and wish them exclusively, and not wish at the same time 100 other incompatible things just as strongly." In the Bible you read, in Mark 9:23, "If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth." Dr. Norman Vincent Peale said this, "This is one of the greatest laws in the universe. Fervently do I wish I had discovered it as a very young man. It dawned upon me much later in life, and I've found it to be one of the greatest, if not my greatest discovery outside of my relationship to God. And the great law, briefly and simply stated, is that if you think in negative terms, you'll get negative results. If you think in positive terms, you will achieve positive results. That is the simple fact which is at the basis of an astonishing law of prosperity and success. In 3 words, believe and succeed." William Shakespeare put it this way, "Our doubts are traitors, and make us lose the good we oft might win by fearing to attempt." George Bernard Shaw said, "People are always blaming their circumstances for what they are. I don't believe in circumstances. The people who get on in this world are the people who get up and look for the circumstances they want, and if they can't find them, make them." Well, it's pretty apparent, isn't it?
World, we are seldom alone. Our minds are constantly bombarded with information, thoughts, distractions. But what if being alone, truly alone, could be the path to changing your life? Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary samurai, believed so. He spent most of his life in solitude, honing his craft and developing his philosophy. In his final work, Dokudo, or The Path of Walking Alone, Musashi left us 21 precepts that guide a person towards a fulfilling life, a life enriched by the power of solitude. Join us as we delve into Musashi's philosophy of solitude and discover how being alone can indeed change your life. Before we dive into the profound thoughts he left behind, let's first delve into who Miyamoto Musashi was. A revered figure, a ronin, a roving samurai without a lord, Musashi was born in 1584 in a Japan torn apart by civil wars. His prowess with the sword was unparalleled. but it was his profound wisdom that continues to inspire us centuries later. He was an artist, a philosopher, and most famously, a swordsman who won over 60 duels, many of them to the death. But his journey was far from a trail of endless violence. It was a path that led to deep introspection and wisdom. Musashi's life was marked by a relentless pursuit of mastery over self, through discipline, dedication, and crucially, solitude. Musashi's solitude wasn't about a monk-like existence away from society. It was about mental solitude, a self-imposed state of mind where the chatter of the external world was muted. He advocated introspection and a clear mind free from distractions as the path to self-improvement. This understanding was encapsulated in his Dokudo, which translates to the path of walking alone. Through these precepts, he provided guidance on how to live without fear, regret, or distraction, and the importance of being true to oneself. Let's now delve into these teachings and unravel how embracing solitude can significantly alter our lives. The importance of solitude. Musashi's philosophy emphasized solitude, not as a means to isolation, but as a path to self-discovery and self-improvement. He believed that solitude allowed him to sharpen his mind and body without distraction, honing his skills and understanding himself at a deeper level. In the silence and peace of solitude, he found clarity, freed from the influence and judgment of others. It was an opportunity for him to learn, grow, and come to terms with his own strengths and weaknesses, without the external noise that often clouds our judgment and self-perception. Musashi wrote, "Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world." He urged people to turn their focus outward, to observe, learn, and understand the world around them, while maintaining a humble sense of self. It's about removing ego and opening oneself to the vast knowledge the world has to offer. This humble self-awareness, coupled with a profound understanding of the world, forges a formidable path towards self-improvement and personal growth. But how can we apply these ancient teachings to our modern lives? Let's delve into practical ways to walk our own path of solitude, guided by Musashi's wisdom. The lessons Musashi gleaned from solitude are not just applicable to the life of a samurai, but can be carried into our lives today, centuries later. He formulated these insights into the Dokudo, also known as the Path of Aloneness, or the Way to Go Forth Alone, a short work written a week before his death. One of the lessons Musashi teaches us is the value of self-reliance. He states in the Dokudo, "Do not seek pleasure for its own sake." This is a reminder that fleeting happiness derived from external validation or material possessions does not lead to long-lasting fulfillment. Instead, Musashi urges us to find satisfaction within ourselves, in our actions, and in our personal growth. Another key point in the Dokudo is the principle of do not, under any circumstances, depend on a partial feeling. This urges us to not act impulsively based on transient emotions, but to carefully contemplate our actions and their consequences. Our decisions should be thoughtfully made, fully conscious, and independent of fleeting feelings or external influences. Furthermore, Musashi highlights the importance of being unattached to physical and temporal things. In the Dokudo, he advises, do not hold on to possessions you no longer need. This counsel to let go of unnecessary attachments isn't just about material possessions. It also extends to relationships, habits, and thoughts that no longer serve us. It's a lesson in decluttering our lives, physically and mentally, creating more room for growth and transformation. In another precept, he states, do not fear death. This is not a call to be reckless, but an encouragement to live fully and fearlessly, with the understanding that death is a part of life. It's a prompt to live each day as if it were your last, cherishing every moment and taking opportunities as they come. And lastly, he urges us to be detached from desire your whole life long. This teaches us to free ourselves from the constant yearning for more that often leads to dissatisfaction and unhappiness. It's about learning to be content with what we have while still striving for self-improvement. These are just a few of the principles Musashi left us in his Dokudo. They provide us with a roadmap for navigating life, highlighting the value of introspection, self-reliance, thoughtful decision-making, and detachment from the superfluous. Today's world is vastly different from Musashi's time. We're constantly connected, with technology tying us together more closely than ever before.
Wait, you think I didn't think of that? Of course I thought of that.
What do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
The Pinky and the Brain. Yes, Pinky and the Brain. One is a genius, the other's insane. They're laboratory mice. Their genes have been spiced. They're Pinky and the Brain. Brain, 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 brain. Before each night is done, their plan will be unfurled by the dawning of the sun. They'll take over the world.
Everything you are derives from electrochemical synapses running in your brain. Well, here's something interesting. You go to a funeral parlor and your friend Frederick just died. You don't say, hey, which room is Freddie in? You say, where is the body of Fred? We all say that. That's a tacit admission that the body of Fred is not Fred, that Fred is something else that's no longer there. And that matches perfectly with the concept of a soul. So you recognize there was something there when they were alive that isn't there when they're dead. Well, what is it that was there when they were alive? Well, we have some evidence for this. The neurosynapses of your brain. And how do we know the brain is you? Because you can stroke out bits by bits of your brain, whole sections that just shut down.
When you have a soul tie with someone, no matter what your mouth says, no matter what your fingers do, unfollowing them and unfriending them, it is never over until you break that tie. Now, how do you break that tie? The first thing I suggest is to realize that you have a soul tie with this person. To be honest, because a lot of people out there, women and men, they want to act like, oh man, forget him, I'm dumbing him, and like, you know, all the tough talk, all the dishonest talk. He was nothing anyway, all that. But are you being honest with yourself? So the first thing, like addiction, is to realize and to admit that you have a soul tie with this person. The next thing is...
And this is the phase of life Jung is mostly concerned with, the realm of the unconscious. The world of the inner life is as infinite as the world of the outer life. Man lives in two worlds. Many people, however, have neglected this part of themselves and only remain half alive. They are unprepared by the natural transition into the second half of life and fall into a midlife crisis because they have not learned to align both worlds. When we are confronted with the real and crushing problems of life, we desperately search for our soul. We realize that the values we have learned from society provides no help to us. Conformity is the great destroyer of selfhood. The opposite to courage in our society is not cowardice, it is conformity. We are often persuaded to take the apparently easier road of merging with the crowd and forgetting ourselves. It requires courage to stand against the crowd. A person can be surrounded by a crowd of people and yet feel completely alone.
See, people are mistaking their love and their relationship. You must separate these two things. Love is what you are. Love is something that you experience within yourself. Relationship is what you do. How you relate to this person, how you relate to this person, how you relate to this person is entirely different because the transactions cannot be same with everybody.
Let's be honest, my nigga. The block probably was my first love. Crazy when they don't love you back, though. Uncommon. The quarterback in the huddle, I call the audibles. We all been through the struggle, I shine for all of us. My nigga locked in that system, he never call him much. Serving life in the prisons and God call him up. On jumpsuit, chop bricks like it's kung fu. Write her name on that visit, she never come through. To death do us part, that's what he thought. Would've been scot-free, told on the squad. If you talking respect, then they yearn the utmost. First they love you and they hate you, man, where the love go?
Few people know this, but Thoth, the master of invisible worlds, left behind a vibrational secret capable of altering not just personal energy, but the very fabric of reality itself. This secret is hidden within the third most powerful law of the universe, the law of vibration. Everything you feel, think, and emit becomes a wave that organizes, attracts, or repels realities. And within this sacred law, there are three hidden forces that activate true vibrational control: the fire of will, love as the highest frequency, and the word as the bridge of creation between the invisible and the visible. Throughout this video, you will understand how the energy of your heart shapes the toroidal field that connects you to the universe, how the vibration of your words alters the environments around you, and how your internal intention sparks the flame that repositions your existence in harmony with cosmic rhythms. Together, we will cross the veil that separates appearance from essence and reveal how Thoth taught that true power is not outside, but pulses silently within you, waiting to be awakened. Imagine that you are standing before a great source of light, intense, infinite, pulsing silently at the center of the universe. This light is pure energy. It is there, available, existing without form, without direction, simply being what it is, absolute potential. Now, imagine that this light starts pulsing in different rhythms. Sometimes gentle like a breeze, sometimes intense like thunder. It dances. It moves. It creates invisible patterns that ripple through space. At that moment, the energy ceases to be just potential. It transforms into vibration. It gains direction, tone, intention. This difference is subtle to the eyes, but vital for those seeking to understand the true architecture of reality. Energy is what everything is, but it is vibration that shapes what energy will become. If energy is like a silent, endless sea, vibration is the wind that blows over its waters, creating waves, currents, movements that shape destinies. Without vibration, energy would remain asleep, a sleeping giant in the womb of the cosmos. It is the vibrational pulse that awakens this giant and gives it purpose. This is the first truth that Thoth's calling invites us to see. Everyone has energy. Few master vibration. We all carry within our bodies, minds, and souls an immense amount of vital energy. However, this energy does not organize itself. It needs a vibrational command to align, to manifest coherently with our deepest desires. Vibration is that command. The way you think, feel, and believe generates vibrational patterns. Each pattern vibrates at a specific frequency. And this frequency, invisible but powerful, determines the quality of your life, your relationships, your health, your prosperity, and your inner peace. Without realizing it, many live at the mercy of the vibrations they absorb from the world around them. They react to problems like leaves dragged by the wind, allowing fleeting emotions to mold their most intimate frequencies. They vibrate fear, anger, doubt, and wonder why the world feels so heavy. But Thoth teaches something different. He whispers across time. Vibration is not something that happens to you. It is something you choose consciously with every breath. This is where the true vibrational alchemist separates from the one who lives on autopilot. The alchemist knows that reality is not an unbreakable wall. It is a weave of malleable energies, continuously responding to the subtle emissions of your consciousness. Now imagine your body as a musical instrument, a sensitive instrument, capable of emitting invisible sounds that travel across dimensions. Every thought you hold is like a note played on this instrument. Every emotion is a melody that echoes far beyond what the senses can capture.
Dance, dance to the rhythm, you know how it goes. Tick, tack, go. Tick, tack, go.
Timepiece frosty.
If you think sadness, you will play sad chords. If you think hope, you will begin to vibrate songs of light. Vibration is the silent language that tells the universe who you are, even without saying a word. And that is why understanding the difference between energy
They don't want you to know how powerful you actually are, because if you did, the world as you know it would collapse overnight. Psychic powers aren't fiction, they're forgotten. Your intuition, telepathy, remote viewing, even the ability to shift probabilities, they're not rare gifts, they're native faculties, sleeping in plain sight. Since childhood, you've been told to shut up, sit still, memorize, and never question what's possible. That wasn't guidance, that was suppression. What if the thoughts in your head weren't just noise, but frequencies? What if the images in your mind weren't imagination, but early-stage creation? You've been trained to laugh at psychic ability, to write it off as mysticism or madness. But deep down, you've always known something was off, like you were meant to remember something that no one ever taught you. You are not here to observe reality. You are here to command it. This isn't a lesson. This is an initiation, and it starts now. You were taught that thoughts live inside your head, private echoes bouncing in your skull, harmless and self-contained. But that was the first lie. Thought is not passive. It's not invisible. It's not even yours in the way you've been led to believe. Thought is energy. It vibrates. It radiates. It reaches. And like electricity through a wire or a broadcast signal through open air, your thoughts don't stay inside you. They move outward, shaping the fabric of your reality without your permission, and often without your awareness. The world doesn't happen to you. It responds to you. Every emotion you feel, every image you replay, every belief you carry, projects into the world like a magnet attracting its match. You're not just reacting to the day, you're summoning it, unconsciously. That awkward conversation that spiraled into chaos, that stroke of unexpected luck, that tension in your chest mirrored by a tense morning at work, none of it is random. You're emitting a frequency, and reality, loyal and blind, answers that frequency with precision. The moment you understand this, really understand it, you stop being a passenger in your life. You realize you've been holding the wheel the entire time. Most just don't know they're steering. And this isn't just some cute spiritual phrase to stick on a t-shirt. It's the law. A broadcast always returns with a signal, and your thoughts are not whispers. They are blueprints. You've already seen this. The day you woke up anxious, and everything felt off. The time you walked into a room and shifted its mood without speaking. The rush of coincidence that followed a moment of deep clarity. That wasn't fate. That was you. Every experience in your life is an echo of your inner state. But if thought is this powerful, why don't more people use it consciously? Because most aren't thinking. They're looping. Repeating inherited narratives, absorbed fears, borrowed desires. They aren't thinking. They're remembering what the world told them to want, to fear, to expect. And when you recycle the same inner story, you recycle the same outer life, again and again, until you start to wonder if maybe this is just how life is. It's not. It's just how your thoughts are. And here's where everything changes. The moment you stop treating thought as chatter and begin to treat it as command, the shift begins. You step into the space where reality is shaped, not later, not with effort, but with alignment. And this is where the real work begins.
Your passion took you from your kitchen to
The frequency that makes it inevitable. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you consistently are. Most people will never hear this. And there are things we simply cannot share here. That's why we created the free Insights Academy newsletter. Go to the link in the description and enter your email to access exclusive teachings, cause, meeting visible effect. At first it's subtle, then it becomes undeniable. This is what we call the first pulse. The first pulse is the moment your mind begins emitting a new signal, one that is not dictated by the world, but chosen by your will. It is the threshold where your inner vibration starts aligning with a reality you were previously locked out of. The shift isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's not even immediate. But it's precise. You start to notice that your inner state is no longer a secret. It's reflected in your conversations, your health, your timing, your outcomes. Thought stops being a reaction and becomes a tool, a blade, a current. And once you experience that first pulse, the door to the rest opens. You no longer live waiting for permission, for signs, for someone to validate your next step. You begin to sculpt the day with deliberate tone. You become the tuning fork instead of the noise. You realize the most powerful force in your life isn't what you do, it's what you think, repeatedly, emotionally, and with conviction. You are not just a person navigating a world. You are a signal shaping it. The first pulse is just the beginning. Most people believe they are thinking. They're not. They're being thought. By the world, by habit, by 1,000 silent voices. They never chose but carry like second skins. Walk down any street, sit in any classroom, scroll through any feed, you'll see it. Thought is not sovereign there. It's reactive, fragmented, scattered like leaves in wind. The average mind is not a commander but a captive, running loops it didn't write, chasing feelings it can't explain, fearing outcomes it's already scripted in advance. This is the hidden architecture of modern life. Your mind has been colonized, not with chains, but with noise, conditioning, repetition, suggestion. You're told what to want, what to fear, what to admire. You're trained to silence the inner voice unless it agrees with the dominant narrative. And when you do try to think for yourself, to feel a truth deeper than the noise, the world rushes in to correct you. It calls you irrational. It calls you selfish. It calls you naive. And slowly, piece by piece, you abandon the throne of your own awareness. You become a follower in your own mind. But the throne never disappears. It waits, silent, centered, untouched by the tides of thought. That throne is your birthright. It is not built on logic or emotion, but awareness. Not the kind of awareness that watches quietly in meditation and then forgets, but the awareness that chooses where to place attention, what thoughts to allow, what beliefs to dismantle. Sovereignty begins not with control, but with clarity. It is the recognition that you are not your passing moods, your fleeting urges, or your recycled fears. You are the one who sees them. the one who can command them. You are the I behind the noise. When you begin to live from that I, everything changes. You no longer panic when fear arises. You don't spiral when doubt creeps in. You see them, name them, and let them pass like weather. And slowly, the winds lose their grip. The inner throne becomes more than an idea. It becomes your seat of power, a place you return to with every breath, every decision, every moment of awareness. From there, you don't fight the mind. You direct it. You don't obey emotion. You refine it. You don't get pulled by the world's endless emergencies. You observe, choose, and act with intention. The world does not teach this. It teaches you to obey. It rewards you for repeating what you've been told. It celebrates agreement and punishes disruption. And so most people never meet their true mind. They live in the outer layers, reactions, opinions, borrowed thoughts. They speak from memory, not from knowing. But when you step back, just once, and ask, who is thinking this thought? You tear a hole in the veil. You create space. And in that space, sovereignty is born. Reclaiming the throne is not about becoming cold, rigid, or mentally distant. It's about becoming deliberate. It's about choosing your mental environment with the same care you'd choose the people in your home. You stop tolerating the inner critic. You stop hosting doubt as if it were wisdom. You stop entertaining guilt as if it were truth. The sovereign mind is not obsessed with positivity. It's rooted in truth. And truth, when felt clearly, is quiet, focused, and uncompromising. Once you begin living from that center, psychic development becomes inevitable. Because now, your energy isn't being drained by contradiction. Your will isn't being scattered across 100 half-beliefs. You become aligned. And alignment is what unlocks the faculties that once seemed mythic. Intuition sharpens, insight pierces deeper, and the world responds to your presence, not just your actions. This is why the ancients didn't separate magic from discipline, or power from awareness. They knew that before one could move objects, they must master attention. Before one could perceive beyond the veil, they must clear the fog within. The mind is the temple, the will is the priest, and thought, when placed upon the altar with clarity, becomes invocation. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more sovereignty. And it starts with this: sit upon the throne of your mind, not as a tyrant, not as a child, but as the silent architect who knows that every thought permitted is a seed, and the world you walk through tomorrow will grow from what you allow to root today. You've been taught to fear your emotions, to treat them like flaws, malfunctions, or dangerous storms that should be hidden, silenced, or medicated. But the truth is, your emotions are not obstacles. They are energy, raw and unfiltered, waiting to be shaped. Anger, fear, jealousy, shame. These aren't signals that something is wrong with you. They are invitations, signals of untapped power, unprocessed truth, and unrealized potential. The system that raised you never taught this, because emotional sovereignty is the gateway to real freedom. And freedom is the one thing the system can't sell, tax, or control. Emotional alchemy begins when you stop asking how to get rid of uncomfortable feelings and start asking what they're made of. Fear, at its root, is perception sharpened by uncertainty. Anger is love poisoned by injustice. Jealousy is a signpost toward your own forgotten desires. These aren't enemies, they're elements. Lead, iron, mercury. And like any alchemist knows, base metal isn't useless. It's the material through which gold is made. But only if you learn to work with it. Most people don't. They repress, suppress, or explode. They avoid emotional discomfort like a virus, not realizing that avoidance is what gives it power. When you suppress a feeling, you don't neutralize it, you amplify it. You drive it deeper into the subconscious, where it begins to shape your thoughts, your choices, your frequency. The feeling doesn't disappear, it embeds itself. And from there, it begins to vibrate below the surface, sending out signals you're not even aware you're transmitting. This is why your emotional state matters more than your intentions. You can visualize success, speak affirmations, recite mantras, but if your dominant emotional frequency is fear or lack, those words are static. The signal doesn't get through. Reality doesn't respond to what you pretend to feel. It responds to what you actually are. This is the forgotten principle behind all psychic power. Your emotional state is the charge behind your thoughts. It's the voltage that fuels your signal. And when you master it, you don't just feel better, you become a generator. So how do you transmute? First, you observe, not judge, not analyze. Is the charge behind your thoughts. It's the voltage that fuels your signal. And when you master it, you don't just feel better, you become a generator. So how do you transmute? First, you observe, not judge, not analyze. Just observe. You feel fear rising in your chest. You don't label it failure. You breathe. You watch it. You hold space. You say, "This is energy. I'm not here to be ruled by it. I'm here to transform it." That space, that pause, is the crucible. Inside it, you change form. Anger becomes clarity. Grief becomes depth. Shame becomes humility. And the more you do this, the more your emotional body begins to trust you. It stops erupting. It starts communicating. And you become not a reactor, but a refiner. The truth is, your emotional body is one of your greatest psychic tools. It can detect lies before they're spoken. It can sense outcomes before they arrive. But only when it's clear. Most people's emotional field is like a fog, thick with old wounds, stagnant reactions, and unspoken needs. To develop real psychic clarity, you need emotional clarity. Not numbness, not detachment. Clarity. The ability to feel fully without being consumed. To sense deeply without getting lost. This is the art of emotional alchemy. There will be days where the feelings hit hard, where your chest tightens, your thoughts race, and your nervous system sounds the alarm. That's not a weakness. That's the system surfacing. That's old patterns trying to rerun their loops. But now you're awake. Now you know that every time you sit with a difficult feeling without reacting, without collapsing, without outsourcing your power, you're breaking a chain. You're choosing evolution over survival.
It's not what's next. It's where.
When you zoom out from the universe, when you zoom out from the universe, you see the way that the clusters of galaxies are compiled. It looks like neurons in a brain.
Really?
Yes. The exact same structure of the inside of a human conscious brain. And then what's incredible is you realize that the universe itself, being conscious, it doesn't really know what's going on here in the third dimension, but it has its friends. Human beings, cats, dogs, a rose, a blade of grass, even a rock. And what is it doing? Everything we know in the third dimension vibrates at a specific frequency. You can't even come to a complete halt. You can't make an atom stop vibrating. Everything vibrates. It's impossible to get to absolute zero unless you create these artificial laboratory conditions. So that means that everything is resonating and vibrating and sending information, in my opinion, back to the source.
Even if something's dead, it's still alive?
The atoms in something dead are still vibrating because they're still atoms. They may convert themselves into something different, like a dead thing may
moving.
It's moving, right? Even the atoms inside of burnt carbon, they're vibrating. The atoms inside of a dead body, they're vibrating, and they're getting ready to be recycled back into this grand system of life. And could become something else. This transformation occurs. Right. Nothing really ever truly dies. It just transforms.
So would you say the universe then has its own set of consciousness or its own consciousness, and its friends are the planets, the stars, beings, trees, water, and it's sending data to the universe?
No, we're sending data back to we're just correct.
It is we
and everything else is sending data back. We're transmitting it back because consciousness is not local to the brain. It's downloaded as a stream. The brain itself, the physical brain, is a quantum computer to process that data and harness that stream of spiritual energy. But we also are two-way. When we're transmitting back, what is it like to be Billy Carson? What is it like to be Lewis Howes? What lessons has Billy and Lewis learned throughout their entire life? The experience, what experiences are they having, good and bad? It's collecting information.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're in the 3D right now.
Yeah.
What is the difference between the 3D and the 5D?
Okay. That's a great question. So the third dimension, I'll tell you first how scientists or what physicists believe this actually is. They created in the laboratory 8th dimensional quasi-crystals. And those 8th dimensional quasi-crystals, when turned to a particular angle, cast down a 4th dimensional quasi-crystal. And when they twist that to a particular angle, it casts out a sphere, which is a shadow, a light shadow, a shadow of light from a higher dimension, which they believe is our known universe. So that we're talking about now beginning to understand the basic mechanism that's creating the universe itself, okay? So with that being said, understanding that, we now know that as you go up in dimensions, you're going up into higher levels of perception of realities. So you have the 4th dimension, which people used to think it was time, but that's just an hour that we utilize here in the 3rd dimension. Technically, there is a 4th dimension called a tesseract. And above that tesseract, you get to the 5th dimension. It gives you even a more broader expansion of or understanding or view of what's really going on in all the realms beneath it, in itself and also beneath it.
Wow.
So every time you step up a dimension, it's like becoming an ascended master. You're moving higher and higher through levels of consciousness. We know that even gravity, through science, they believe it's streaming down from higher dimensions all the way down to the 3rd, making it one of the weakest forces here in the 3rd dimension, because it's truncating all the way down through these other higher dimensions as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So is it possible for humans to get out of the 3rd dimension into a higher dimension?
There's a couple of different tablets that talk about this. In the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, he talks about being able to do this, being able to transcend dimensions through consciousness and actually having this out-of-body experience to take you to higher dimensions. He even gives the code words, which are really frequencies to utter to get through the gates of Arulu.
Wow.
Other ancients in India and Egypt and Asia, and even the indigenous cultures of the Aboriginals in Australia all have this same understanding that it's possible to transcend dimensions. They call it like becoming an ascended master,
wow,
or becoming a sage, and understanding how to tap into these higher dimensions. What's interesting is the Brain Institute, just a couple of years ago, discovered that the human brain connects to 11 dimensions.
Geico has a 97%.
Seeing shit like that. Question. How many faking they streams, getting they plays from machines? I can see behind the smoking mirrors, niggas ain't really big as they seem. I never say anything, everybody got their thing. Some niggas make millions, other niggas make memes.
So they're now hypothesizing that the human mind is also quantum entangling with information, data, or something else in another place, and then reappearing here. So it just gets deeper and deeper.
I guess, where are dreams then? What dimension are our dreams when we sleep?
That's incredible. I would always think that, from my perspective, that dreams are probably closer to reality.
Really?
Yeah. I think that, because the ancients, like the Aboriginals, call this dream time in this realm now. The Hopi tribe called it sleepy time. And what they're alluding to is that this reality, this thing that we think is reality, is not real, but that we have a higher self in another realm. And that a lot of the times the voice we hear in our head that we are proclaiming as this other source, or maybe sometimes even other deity, really is our own self talking to us.
Wow.
And that there is another version of us that exists in a higher dimension, and we're spiritually connected with that higher source. And that dreams potentially are glimpses of higher dimensions, or being able to access some of these higher dimensions through consciousness.
You have so much content online that I've seen. We talk about these kind of, aliens and pyramids and kind of all these different things, different dimensions. But I think the stuff that I like the most that you talk about, and I think that my audience resonates with the most, is around manifesting their dream reality. Like, they have an idea in their mind of what they want to create.
Yeah.
A business, a relationship, get their health to a certain level. They want to achieve an accomplishment in a sport or musical success, whatever it might be. They want to take something they have in their mind and alchemize it into the real world that we're in, if this is real, right? But they want to create it in this reality.
Yes.
And I'm curious, with all your studies, because you've been studying this for decades, about kind of ancient wisdom, forbidden wisdom.
Yeah.
But also you've been studying modern philosophy and modern, science as well.
Oh, yeah.
So what does the ancient wisdom you've researched and modern science taught you about manifesting?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. See, the ancient wisdom, you discovered that there were these beings in the ancient Sumerian cuneiform tablets, and they were called the Anuna, and later they were called the Anunnaki. And in there, some of them call themselves the ordainers of destiny. And what's so interesting about this is they actually had the capability of foreseeing potential outcomes based on whatever agenda they want to put out. But they would envision these potential outcomes. They would see them on this crystal tablet, which is so bizarre, first of all. That's 6,000 years ago, or maybe even more. But then they would, when they found the outcome that they wanted to happen, they would then create action steps toward that particular outcome, nudging that outcome into reality, collapsing it into the reality tunnel, making it a part of this third dimension while they're alive and living on that timeline. And I learned that really from them. I had done this myself by accident as a younger kid, just coming up with the idea, like, if I want something, I've got to put action steps behind it. And I remember I was at my house and living in Opelika down in Miami, Florida, an unincorporated Dade County, a very harsh neighborhood. And I was banned from leaving the front porch because the neighborhood was so deadly. But I was so tired of seeing my friends go to the ice cream truck. And I'm like, we're both poor. How can they get it every day? Like, how? And so I said to myself, I'm going to take a risk. And I got a Winn-Dixie milk crate that we had, and I loaded up all my toys, and I went door to door around the block and asked for donations for my toys, a penny, a nickel, a dollar, whatever. I just want to have money for the ice cream truck. And people were giving me money, these parents. When I got back to my front door, I actually had $13 in change. And I was like,
how old were you?
Wow. I was 7 years old.
7.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm sorry, 8 years old, or 8. Forgive me. 8 years.
It's a lot of money back in the 70s.
That was a lot of money.
As an 8-year-old,
yeah, that was a lot of money.
13 bucks at 8, you're rich.
Yeah, you're rich. And you had a lot of money because ice cream was like, I only wanted the bazooka bubble gums. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I had a conscious thought. I envisioned potential outcome would be, I would have money in my hands to buy my gum from the truck, and I took action. So it's conscious thought multiplied by action equals manifestation, which I then read later in ancient text. That's what this shirt is. Wow. CT multiplied by A equals M. Conscious thought multiplied by action equals manifestation.
Wow.
That's the formula.
Thank you for watching this video. If you want more inspiring clips,
Black Air Force Energy.